Welcome to Lord Nightmare channel. We share scary stories with rainy ambience. I hope this video helps you in some way to sleep, relax, or just be entertained for a while. If you enjoy it, please think about subscribing and hitting the thumbs up button to help my channel out. Now let's begin.
You know that feeling when something just doesn't sit right? Like the air in the room feels heavier than usual? That was me last Friday night. I had planned a quiet evening at home. Just me, a bowl of popcorn, and a few episodes of my favorite show. My roommate was out of town, so I had the entire house to myself. I thought it would be relaxing, but I was so wrong. The evening started off normal enough. I'd locked the front door, turned off the porch light, and settled into the couch with a blanket. The soft hum of the TV filled the room, and for a while, it was exactly what I wanted, peaceful. But around 9:30, I noticed something odd. You see, we have this motion-activated porch light outside. It only turns on if someone, or something, moves in front of it. I hadn't thought much of it when the light flicked on the first time, figuring it was a stray cat or maybe the wind blowing the bushes. But when it happened again, just a few minutes later, I started to feel uneasy. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. Just the faint sound of the wind outside. I even got up and peeked through the blinds. The porch was empty. Feeling a little paranoid, I double-checked that the door was locked, shook my head at my own nervousness, and went back to the couch. But then it happened a third time. This time, the light stayed on longer. I stared at the front door, the glowing light casting eerie shadows through the curtains. My stomach tightened. Probably just the wind, I muttered to myself. Still, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. I decided to check again, but instead of just peeking through the blinds, I grabbed my phone and turned on the camera, aiming it out the window. I didn't see anything unusual at first, but as I slowly scanned the porch and the yard, I caught a glimpse of someone. There was a figure standing just beyond the edge of the light. My heart stopped. Whoever it was stood completely still, their outline barely visible in the shadows. I couldn't make out any details. A hoodie, maybe? I couldn't tell. I ducked away from the window, my breath quickening. Was it just some random person passing by? But why would they stand there? Why not walk up to the door or just keep moving? I stayed crouched by the window, clutching my phone, trying to decide what to do. Call the police? But what would I even say? Hi, there's a creepy person standing on my lawn? After what felt like an eternity, I worked up the courage to peek again. This time, the figure was gone. The motion light had turned off, and the yard was pitch black. I told myself they'd just moved on, probably some prankster trying to spook me. But then I heard it. A faint tap at the back door. I froze. The back door? That didn't make any sense. Our backyard is fenced in, and the only way to get back there is through a gate that's almost always locked. I grabbed a kitchen knife, not exactly comforting, but it was better than nothing, and crept toward the back of the house. As I approached the door, the tapping stopped. My pulse pounded in my ears. I reached for the light switch and flipped it on, illuminating the backyard. It was empty, not a soul in sight. The gate was closed just like I'd left it. I stood there, gripping the knife, feeling a mix of fear and confusion. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe I'd just been so spooked by the figure out front that I was hearing things. And then, the motion light in the backyard turned on. I barely had time to react before I saw it. A shadow darting past the window. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the knife. I backed away from the door, my eyes locked on the window, waiting for something, anything, to happen. That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I nearly screamed. It was a notification from the doorbell camera. Someone was at the front door. I hesitated for a moment before opening the app, half expecting to see an empty porch. But no, there was someone there. The camera showed a man standing directly in front of the door, his face just barely visible under the porch light. He wasn't moving, wasn't knocking, just standing there, staring at the door. My breath caught in my throat. I turned the volume on my phone all the way up, hoping to hear something. But there was only silence. He didn't say a word. And then he turned his head slowly, looking directly at the camera. I don't know what scared me more, the fact that he knew I was watching or the twisted, almost taunting smile that spread across his face. I did the only thing I could think of. I called 911. The operator's calm voice was the only thing keeping me grounded as I whispered what was happening. She told me to stay on the line, that officers were on their way. Minutes felt like hours. I kept watching the camera feed, expecting him to break down the door at any moment. But he didn't. He just stood there, grinning, until the faint sound of sirens echoed down the street. And then, just like that, he was gone. When the police arrived, they searched the yard and the surrounding area but didn't find anything. No footprints, no signs of forced entry, nothing. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. They told me it was probably some drifter or prankster, someone looking to scare an easy target. But I knew it was more than that. The way he looked at the camera, it felt personal. I didn't sleep at all that night. And even now, every time the porch light flickers on, I feel a chill run down my spine. I don't know who he was or what he wanted, but I'll never forget that smile. I've always hated staying late at work, but last Thursday, I didn't have a choice. Deadlines were looming, and I'd promised myself I'd finish everything before the weekend. By the time I finally logged off my computer, it was well past 10 p.m. I live in an old apartment building, one of those places where the hallways echo when you walk, and the lights flicker more often than they should. It's not the nicest place, but it's home. That night, as I unlocked the front door, the hallway felt off. It wasn't just the flickering lights or the silence, though those were unsettling enough. It was the smell. A faint, sour odor hung in the air, like something rotting. I wrinkled my nose and hurried inside, locking the door behind me. My apartment was the same as I'd left it, cozy, quiet, and completely normal. I tossed my bag on the couch, grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, and sat down to unwind. That's when I heard it, a soft, deliberate knock at the door. It startled me because no one ever visits me that late. My neighbors are mostly older folks who go to bed early, and my friends know better than to drop by unannounced. I stayed still, listening. Maybe I'd imagined it. Knock, knock. It was louder this time. I got up and tiptoed to the door, peeking through the peephole. The hallway was empty. I frowned. Was this some kind of prank? I opened the door just a crack and peeked out. There was no one there. The sour smell I'd noticed earlier was stronger now, making me gag. I quickly shut the door and locked it again, double-checking that the chain was in place. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just my imagination. But as I sat back down, I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. My apartment felt too quiet, too still. A few minutes later, I heard it again. This time, it wasn't a knock. It was the sound of something brushing against the door. A soft, scraping noise, like fingernails dragging across the wood. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone and texted my neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, who lived across the hall. She was a sweet lady in her 70s, always quick to respond. "Hey, is everything okay over there? Did you hear anything weird just now?" Her reply came almost instantly. "I'm not home, dear. Visiting my daughter." Why, my hands were shaking as I typed back. "Never mind. Just thought I heard something." I didn't want to scare her, or myself, any more than I already was. The scraping stopped, but the uneasy feeling didn't go away. I decided to distract myself by watching TV, turning the volume up to drown out any more strange noises. It worked for a while, until I heard footsteps. They weren't coming from outside the door. They were inside the apartment. My heart started pounding. I muted the TV and strained to listen. The footsteps were faint, almost hesitant, but they were definitely there. Soft thuds moving from the hallway toward the living room. Toward me. I grabbed the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, a heavy lamp, and stood up, my eyes darting around the room. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. "Who's there?" No answer. The footsteps stopped. I stood frozen, my knuckles white as I gripped the lamp. Every instinct was screaming at me to get out, but I couldn't move. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A shadow. It was faint, barely visible in the dim light, but it was there. A figure standing at the edge of the hallway, just out of view. My breath hitched. "I'm calling the police," I shouted, hoping to scare them off. The shadow didn't move. I backed away slowly, my phone in my other hand, and dialed 911. The operator's calm voice felt like a lifeline as I explained what was happening. "Stay on the line," she said. "Officers are on their way. Can you lock yourself in a room?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I think so." I inched toward my bedroom, keeping my eyes on the hallway. The shadow was gone now, but I didn't trust it. I shut the door and locked it, my heart racing as I pressed my ear against the wood. The apartment was silent again. "Are you still there?" the operator asked. "Yes," I whispered. Then I heard it, the faint sound of breathing. It was coming from inside the bedroom. I spun around, my eyes darting to the closet. The door was slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness visible through the crack. I backed away, tears streaming down my face as I whispered into the phone, "They're in here." "Oh my God, they're in here." "Stay calm," the operator said. "Help is almost there." I didn't wait. I grabbed the lamp and yanked the door open, screaming as I swung blindly. The closet was empty, but the breathing didn't stop. It was behind me now. I don't remember much after that. The police found me huddled in the corner of the room, clutching the lamp, too terrified to speak. They searched the apartment but didn't find anyone. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, nothing. But I know what I heard. And every night since, I've slept with every light in the apartment on, the bedroom door locked, and a weapon by my side. Because whoever or whatever was in my apartment that night, they weren't human. And I'm not sure they ever left. When my sister asked me to babysit her 1-year-old daughter, Mia, I didn't think twice. It was just for one evening while she and her husband went out for their anniversary dinner. I'd watched Mia before, and she was a sweet, quiet baby. What could go wrong? It was a normal setup, a cozy evening in their house, a monitor to keep an ear on Mia while she slept upstairs, and a comfy spot on the couch for me to binge watch my favorite shows. My sister had given me the rundown. Mia's bedtime was 8 p.m., her room was at the end of the hall, and the baby monitor was already set up on the kitchen counter. By 8:30, Mia was fast asleep, and I was settling in for a relaxing night. The monitor had a small screen, so I could see her crib and hear the faint hum of the white noise machine they always used to help her sleep. Around 9:15, I heard it for the first time. A faint, scratchy whisper coming through the monitor. It was so soft I almost missed it. I paused my show and leaned closer to the monitor, squinting at the screen. Mia was still lying in her crib, perfectly still, the white noise machine humming in the background. I told myself it was probably interference, maybe a neighbor's monitor on the same frequency or some kind of static. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that it sounded like a voice. I turned the volume down a notch and tried to focus on my show. But about 10 minutes later, it happened again. This time, the whisper was louder, clearer. "Shh, don't wake her." My blood ran cold. I stared at the monitor, my heart pounding. The camera showed Mia's crib, the faint glow of her nightlight illuminating the room. No one else was there. I grabbed the monitor and quickly went upstairs. The house was silent as I climbed the steps, my socks muffling my footsteps. When I reached Mia's room, I opened the door just a crack and peeked inside. She was still there, sleeping soundly. I scanned the room, looking for anything out of place. A shadow, a movement, anything, but there was nothing. The baby monitor had to be picking up some kind of interference, I told myself. Maybe it was an old device picking up random frequencies. I went back downstairs, trying to convince myself it was nothing, but I couldn't relax. A little after 10 p.m., I heard it again. This time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a man's voice, low and deliberate. "She's such a pretty little thing." I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The monitor screen still showed Mia's crib, but now the static was louder, crackling faintly over the white noise. I shot up from the couch and ran back upstairs, my hands shaking as I flung the door open. The room was empty. Mia was still in her crib, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. The nightlight cast long shadows across the walls, but nothing seemed out of place. I checked the windows, they were locked. The closet, empty. The baby monitor camera was exactly where it had been, perched on the shelf above her crib. I stood there for a moment, my heart hammering, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. And then I felt it, a shift in the air. It was subtle, like the room had gotten colder in an instant. My skin prickled, and I turned slowly, my eyes darting around the room. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The baby monitor camera. It was tilted, just slightly as if someone had touched it. I was certain it had been pointing directly at the crib when I put Mia to bed. But now, it was angled toward the corner of the room. I didn't wait to find out more. I grabbed Mia, clutching her to my chest as she stirred and whimpered. I bolted downstairs, grabbed my phone, and called my sister. She picked up on the second ring, her voice confused. "What's wrong?" "There's something wrong with the monitor," I stammered. "I think someone's in the house." Her voice turned serious. "We're on our way. Get out of the house, now." I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed the diaper bag, wrapped Mia in a blanket, and hurried outside to wait on the front lawn. When my sister and her husband arrived a few minutes later, I was still shaking. They checked the house from top to bottom, but there was no sign of anyone. No forced entry, no open windows, nothing. We all tried to brush it off as a technical glitch, maybe a neighbor's monitor bleeding into theirs. But as I handed Mia back to my sister, I couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling that followed me home. That night, as I lay in bed, I got a text from my sister. "Did you touch the monitor camera?" I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. "No," I replied. "Why?" Her response came almost immediately. "It's pointing at the closet now." I never thought much about the guest room in my house. It was just there, a place for storage, the occasional overnight guest, or when my niece came to visit. But after what happened last week, I can't even look at that room the same way anymore. It all started when my cousin, Rachel, asked if she could crash at my place for a couple of days while her apartment was being fumigated. Of course, I said yes. I just cleaned out the guest room, making it cozy with fresh sheets and a little bedside lamp. The only thing in there that might have stood out was this old mirror that came with the house. It was tall, antique-looking, and leaned against the wall in the corner. The first night, everything seemed fine. Rachel went to bed early, and I stayed up watching TV in the living room. Around midnight, I heard her door creak open, followed by soft footsteps coming down the hallway. "Hey, everything okay?" I called out. Rachel appeared in the doorway, her face pale and tense. "Yeah," she said hesitantly, "but do you ever hear weird noises in that room?" I frowned. "No, not really. What kind of noises?" She shrugged, looking embarrassed. "I don't know. Like tapping? Or scratching? I thought it was the pipes or something." I laughed it off, telling her the house was old and probably just settling. She nodded but didn't look convinced. After a few minutes of small talk, she went back to bed, and I didn't think much more about it. But the next morning, Rachel looked exhausted. She said she barely slept because she kept hearing noises again, tapping on the walls, faint whispers she couldn't quite make out. "I swear I even saw something move in the mirror," she said, forcing a laugh like she didn't want me to think she was crazy. Now I was starting to feel uneasy. I'd never noticed anything strange in that room before, but Rachel wasn't the type to make stuff up. I decided to check it out myself. That afternoon, while Rachel was out, I went into the guest room. The mirror immediately drew my attention. I'd never really looked at it closely before, but now it seemed wrong somehow. The glass was a little cloudy, the frame tarnished with an almost greenish hue, like it had been in a damp basement for years. I leaned in to inspect it, and for a moment, I thought I saw something move in the reflection, a flicker of motion just behind me. My heart skipped a beat, and I spun around, but the room was empty. I told myself it was just my imagination. But as I stood there, staring at the mirror, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. That night, I decided to sleep in the guest room myself. I wanted to prove to Rachel, and to myself, that there was nothing weird about the room. Big mistake. It was quiet at first, just the sound of the wind outside and the occasional creak of the house. But around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of tapping. I sat up, my heart pounding, and looked around the room. The noise was faint, coming from somewhere near the mirror. It wasn't the kind of noise a house settling makes. It was deliberate, rhythmic. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, aiming it at the mirror. What I saw made my blood run cold. There were handprints on the glass, foggy, smeared handprints, like someone had pressed their palms against the surface from the inside. And then I saw it. A shadow moved in the reflection. Not in the room, just in the mirror. It was tall, hunched, with long, spindly arms that seemed to stretch unnaturally. My breath caught in my throat as the shadow turned slowly, as if it knew I was watching. I scrambled out of the bed, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone to call Rachel. "You were right," I whispered when she answered, my voice trembling. "There's something wrong with this room. There's something in the mirror." She came back immediately, and together, we hauled the mirror out of the house and left it on the curb. I don't know if it was the right thing to do, but I wasn't about to keep it in my home a second longer. Since then, the guest room has been quiet. But sometimes, late at night, I think about that mirror. Where did it come from? Who had it before me? And where is it now? I'll probably never know the answers. But one thing's for sure, I'll never look at an antique mirror the same way again. Have you ever had a similar experience? Maybe you felt like something was watching you, or heard strange noises that you couldn't explain. I'd love to hear your stories. Drop them in the comments below. Let's see who has the creepiest experience to share. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales that'll keep you up at night.